Okay, 11:02. So let's get started. Well, first of all, a very warm welcome to all of our attendees. Thank you for attending today's webinar. We know how busy everyone is. And the whole purpose of these educational webinar series is to bring you information and education from the field, from the work that we're doing. And this particular topic, bottom-up data governance, was presented at the DGIQ, which stands for Data Governance Information Quality, event down in Florida in the winter. And it was one of the most attended sessions during that conference, standing room only. And so we decided to go ahead and take it to the web and offer it up for more people to get this information. And so a little bit about Datasource Consulting and who we are. And if you've attended our other educational webinar series, I apologize, this is probably a little bit redundant. But for those of you that are new to this educational series, a little bit about Datasource Consulting and what we do and why we're even experts in this space. So as a consulting firm, we have been focusing exclusively on enterprise data management, modern data warehouse architectures, and decision intelligence for the last 12 plus years. It's all we do all the time, every day. And then through our parent company, through a recent partnership, we have now expanded our offering, and now we're getting into predictive analytics, machine learning, and robotics. I mean, all that really cool, fun, insightful stuff that requires that the back end, the data aggregation, the quality, the governance, that all of those pieces are in place so that the advanced analytics will have some value. So we divide our work into really two categories: strategy, so that's, roadmaps, project plans, standing up data governance initiatives, right? People, process, and technology, doing environment evaluations, vendor tool evaluations, health checks. That's our strategic arm. And then we have our implementation arm, and these are the doers that really, lock arms with our clients' internal teams, because often they have internal teams, and we work with them together to deliver a solution, whether that's MDM or data governance or a huge data quality initiative or building out a data warehouse to the cloud, whatever the scenario might be. These are the technical people that help us execute. So that's a little bit about Datasource. I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker, Russ Starck. You're in for a real treat. He's the same presenter that was at DGIQ, so we're very excited to have him today. He is a senior data quality, data governance consultant. He's been doing this for 17 plus years. And so a veteran in the space, and he's been in all aspects of data management, from data quality, data acquisition, data analysis, reporting and analytics, to data governance and data quality. So just, the whole gamut. And, if you ask Russ, what do you like about doing your job? He'll tell you that, he loves bringing value to the clients, helping them be dynamic and evolve in the marketplace, to improve operational efficiencies, enhance their market insight, and help them reduce costs and get to decisions quicker. And that's the heart of, why we all work with data. So good stuff. My name there, I'm your host today, Deborah Linger, Vice President of Sales here at Datasource Consulting. And my job really in this educational piece is just to make sure things go smoothly in conjunction with Allison. So thanks, Allison, for all your work. So with that, let's get underway. Russ, take it away.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you for everyone who's joining the call today. This is a topic that is very much present in the market today, and is out there in almost every new proposal or every new conversation. It seems that these words keep on bubbling up: data governance. But oftentimes data governance also gets kind of a bad rap. So one of the things that you might hear or might have heard with data governance is that it's just too much effort, or it's unnecessary. It's another bureaucratic layer. It's too onerous or confusing or restrictive. And while that has historically been, I think, a lot of people's experience, I think if we break it down into much simpler components, we can find that it's very beneficial, and can provide a lot of efficiencies, as well as the higher content and the dependency on data that we're all looking for today. So no matter if it's MDM or data warehouse or moving data to the cloud, these words keep on coming up. We need data governance. So there are several ways that you can approach data governance. And of course, kind of the traditional thought is that this needs to be a top-down support, identifying resources, prioritizing the enterprise-wide standards, then applying policies and directives. And then with that, launching a data governance program with that level of support seems to be ideal. But however, while executive directives can open doors, it doesn't always eliminate all the potential obstacles. So, however, this form of data governance I'm finding more and more is kind of rare out there. What we're seeing more and more today is that people understand that there's a need for it. They know that they want it, so they usually tag one or two people in an organization with a major initiative, and they say, you know, with this project, we want you to launch data governance, whether the project's master data management or, like I said, moving data to the cloud. It could be any level of project, but they don't necessarily give them full support of an executive council and everything else. They say, just tie this into the project and just see where it goes. So that's kind of the conversation we want to have today, is how we can make that work, tying this into a specific initiative, starting kind of from the bottom up, what kind of things to consider, how to kind of bring this all together. So does one size fit all? So the most important thing that I would say about when you're thinking about building a data governance company or component to your corporation is thinking about your culture. How does your company work? What works? How does it work? Who are the people that are key in making things happen? Who are the thinkers? Who are the decision makers? All of those things are really important to start considering. So even though you may not be bringing this in from a top-down perspective, oftentimes, even when you do, you have conflicting priorities, you have conflicting concerns, and people with different objectives going in. So regardless, those are some of the things we need to face. So some challenges to think about going in, or oftentimes you have poorly defined objectives. Make sure that when you're starting your data governance initiative, along with the project, understand what you want to get out of it. What is your objective? You may have a resistant culture. You may have people that say they don't want to do this. Like I said, it's too onerous or too difficult. So in those cases, you want to make sure that you address that you realize that going in. You may have failure to build organizational alliances. And in the small bottom up, that isn't as big a deal, because oftentimes you're only dealing with one project team or one project scope. You have less people conflicting for who's going to win the argument or who's going to get their initiative bringing forward to the council first. So in some cases, you have an advantage starting at the bottom because you have a more focused perspective. So with that, this different approach, one of the things that I would say is to keep it simple kind of concept, one project, one team, and make sure that you understand where you're going. You have clearly defined directives, deliverables, and resources, and then start talking to your customers. Start talking to those people that are sponsoring this program. Why are they about to build what they're going to build? Where have they had their most issues? And or do they have a lot of rework? What do they expect to gain from this project, whether it's MDM, whether it's moving data to the cloud or expansion of the data warehouse? What do they hope to build with this initiative? And why don't they have the data that they need today? What are the challenges that they've experienced in the past? So no pain, kind of no gain concept is understand the pain points. Those are going to be the guiding principles for where you want your governance program to come in and really assist in driving this project to a successful conclusion. At the same time, you need to cultivate your grassroots efforts by emphasizing those that are a key part of the project. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but one of the sources for data stewardship is going to be look at the sponsors, look at the major people that are managing the project, and ask them who they go to. Ask them who their resources are, and how those resources can really be applied, because those are going to be your potential top candidates in many of the cases for some of the roles. And then think about this as that data governance doesn't always, it rarely ever happens as a big bang. In fact, it is always an iterative program. It starts from, whether it's starting from the bottom or starting from the top, you're going to put in place one or two things, work out the bugs in that first effort, and then do it iteratively, continuing to move it up. So the next thing that we want to consider is that the objectives are the same no matter whether you are building a top-down program or a bottom-up program. So here are some of the key things that you need to consider. And you just need to decide on the ones you want to tackle and prioritize them. So what is going to be most efficient or most appropriate for the project that I'm working on today? You can think about core data quality processes. Manage and publishing data dictionaries. That's very critical. Have you identified all of your critical data elements? Do you have business language as well as the appropriate business rules? What about exception handling and data cleansing? Is that a major problem going in? Do you have a whole lot of data issues that you need to address? What are those issues, and should identify them up front? That's often one of the bigger ones. And then you can start with your top 5, top 10. You don't try to boil everything into one solution. With that, do you need data quality metrics? If you are identifying exception processes, one of the important things to show your progress is to make sure that you build data quality metrics. Think about what those can be. Percentage of improvement in your data quality directives, no matter which rule it is. Do you need escalation procedures? So is this a project where you're going to need some executive support, or at least some leadership support, where you may be having challenges along the way, or you may have conflicting ideas even within the project team, and how are you going to escalate those? So going on to core governance procedures, issue escalation and resolution can be a critical component. Also change management. With every project, you have a consideration of scope creep or whatever the case may be. With Agile, we're often getting better at those types of issues because we're communicating more oftenly and more fluently. But do you need an official change management process? And can you leverage what's already in the company today? If you can, great. Create and update data quality standards and policies. If you're doing an MDM program, standards and policies are absolutely critical. Do you have the right code values? Do you have the right reference data for each of your initiatives? Do you have defined standards for your calculations, your aggregations, and all of those various things? Make sure that those are validated and approved so that you don't have some conflicts when you're moving into production. And then do you need data owners? Do you have people that for each domain, whether you're going with customer or product or whatever your domain level is, do you have somebody that can be the overall sponsor and the overall champion from that, from end to end? And then as you move into enhancing your program overall, you need to be able to create new data governance policies and processes. So for each of the various initiatives, whether it's creating new standards or adding new data elements to your already built work, each one of those may be a new process that you need. And along the way, you're going to, as you're growing your program, you may need to add initiatives for how do you onboard new data members? How do you expand your data governance program now that you're building it from the bottom? And then make sure that you maintain a data owner and a steward directory. Make sure it's published. Make sure that everybody can find it and understand what you've done. So these are all important components, no matter whether you're coming from the top down or bottom up. So consider each of them, and then handpick the ones that you want to try to tackle first. You don't necessarily have to take them all on at once. Just pick the ones that are most appropriate to the initiative that you're working on. And then, of course, we're going to go back to iterate, iterate, iterate. This is always how data governance programs are built. So here's where we need to be pragmatic. and approach this in order of magnitude. So instead of trying to take on everything, focus on what's manageable. Focus on the high value project ads and the processes that are required to support them. As I said, pick the top 5 or 10 data quality issues. Pick the business glossary because you need everybody to agree upon the language and how everybody's going to use the data on the back end. And then move forward from there. So everybody on board. So how do I find my resources? You'll find that in almost every organization, there are people that are dealing with the problems today. And there are managers that know who they are. There are those go-to people in the company. Some people call them the data gatekeepers. But you know that if you have a problem or you don't understand a specific value on a report, or if somebody's challenging something on a report that you've presented, who do you go to help answer those questions? And who do the managers go to? Who do they trust? Those are the people that we can always come back to. And those are your potential either data owners, the people that have more leadership and can provide guidance. And the resources of those leaders are most likely some of your great candidates for stewards. They're already fixing the problem. They already feel the pain. What you're doing by tapping them on the shoulder is enabling them, giving them a structure, and giving them an entire program in which they become enabled. And they have now a formal way of coming back and escalating things that are difficult for them, or adding resources where they need to be able to resolve some of those issues. Also, when you bring on new people, as you're identifying the stewards, make sure that you listen to your consumers, as I said, but think globally and act locally. Tap those local resources, but start providing them with the trainings. What does it mean to be a data steward? It means that you no longer think with just the finance hat, maybe, or the marketing hat. Maybe you have to think at a broader level. So this is where you want to talk to your stewards, train them, talk to your data owners, help them understand that this is a larger initiative. And really the end goal is for this to be a company-wide or an organization and enterprise-wide governance program. So you need to start from the beginning thinking of a bigger picture and talk to those people and help them understand that not only can they reach out to their own resources, but give them the opportunity and the resources to go to marketing or legal or whatever other area they may need to get involved. It's often very empowering for stewards once they understand that they have that capability, that they can reach out to resolve issues, not only within their own program, but across the different departments. And if you have a data owner and a sponsor that's working with them, that sponsor can open those doors. That sponsor can be the champion that helps them move to the next level. So that empowerment really makes a big difference in terms of how they're doing their job today, where they were just doing it because they had to. And now you're providing them with a data owner, with additional resources, and with the power of the initiative that you're going forward, you're helping us make this MDM initiative work. You are a critical part and a critical role in the success of moving data to the cloud. And we are going to back you in this. So that empowerment is very powerful. So again, nurturing your resources, teach them how to use their voice. And again, it's like Agile. You have daily stand-ups, bring people together, or weekly meetings with all of the stakeholders. Have people bring together their concerns, talk about what their blockers are, talk about what they need to get past them, and then help provide a framework to do that. Whether it's a SharePoint site, if you could just have access to SharePoint, or an email chain or a distribution chain, or communication with any email groups. Broaden their perspective again to think that enterprise level and provide them with a framework for that success. So having everything published to a SharePoint site where you can start showing the results of your data quality results, where you can show your business glossary, and everybody can start reading and validating those new definitions and components that you're collecting. And then structure the process so that it's repeatable. That's very important as well. So in terms of roles, you don't necessarily have to start with a full-blown data governance committee with all of the different roles and everybody else. You need kind of the bare minimum. And the bare minimum, I would say, would be data owners and data stewards. It can also be data analysts that are playing the role of a data steward or a business analyst. Again, just those core people. The data stewards are kind of going to drive your day-to-day operations. You're getting into the dirt, rolling up the sleeves. They're going to provide you with initial data definitions. The processes, what are the processes that are in place today to support customers? How do you bring on new customers? How do you edit existing customer information? What are those processes that exist today? What are the rules that are out there? Do you have any issues with data quality, or do you have existing rules that need to be a part of this new MDM program? And maybe they're just not, they have not been formalized. You're doing a workaround because there hasn't been an automated way of fixing these things. So you go in every week and manually identify the problems and fix them. What policies may be needed out there? Those data stewards, those people that are dealing with the pain all the time can say, you know, it would really help if we could just fix this process in the other department where they're entering this data. So can we have a standard policy for how to enter the information to begin with? Or if we just have better standards around our data codes and our code valuations, or our aggregations and how we add and bring these two different system data together. One adds one way, the other adds a different way. Or in one system, they're adding male and female as M and F, and another one they're doing as 0 and 1. And we always have conflicts when we try to bring those two data sets together. So what standards should we have out there? Those type of opportunities will all be found at the data steward level. And they can sit down and work with those owners on a weekly basis in those weekly meetings. What are you facing? What did you have? What did you come across this week? What issues are you facing? And that owner could then provide some leadership and can also validate whether those concerns are real, and also provide resources. They can help you formalize and get those standards and policies approved as part of the project. And they can provide that cross-functional decision making, right? They are at a level that they can go to the other departments and their peers and say, hey, we found this. Let's work this out. The goal, of course, is also to eventually build to a kind of a broader level stewardship program. And this is kind of in a governance program. This is a simple drawing of one, but where you have many more roles and many more people involved. So as you're just beginning, think about the fact that you may have to be more in an agile mode, where you cross over functionalities, right? You become the data integration person on one day and the BI person the next. Same kind of thing here. You may have to cross over from being normally a technical steward to helping out the business steward, or moving into from business leader to a governance leader, and playing that role until you get an official person in that role. So remember that everyone on the team plays a part, and they can take on these roles as needed. Shared responsibilities, shared skills, and shared roles. Swimming upstream. You know there's going to be challenges, regardless of whether it's top down or bottom up. Some additional challenges to think about, and just to be ready to consider along the way. Sometimes velocity or unmanaged expectations. Understand that data governance and building these programs is difficult. Oftentimes gathering simple things like a business glossary is like pulling teeth. So understand that velocity may be difficult, but as long as you have a directive and you keep on plugging away, make sure that you just communicate. These are the challenges that we're facing with collecting all of these these terms and the appropriate business definitions for them, and work with your owners and your leaders, just like in an agile situation, to get around those obstacles. And then manage expectations accordingly. Without the lack of leadership, sometimes you may have difficulty with agreement among the leadership. Expect that that's going to come along the way. Work within the bounds. Try to get something that is at least appropriate for the project that you're working on, and then document it. Document that you have this outstanding issue that you're needing to address with a larger council somewhere down the way. But as long as you've documented that and said, here's the decision we made it according to the project and the directives that we're working on, but we realize that at some point this may need to be expanded at some point in the future. And of course, with any small effort, you may not always have the right resources or the lack of empowerment. So just continue to plug away, as I said, and work within the bounds. And then work together to find the solutions that are going to get you past that. So expect some resistance. Some people, as you're pushing this out, may not understand what it is you're trying to do. So expect that may be a consideration that you have to address. You can't buy your way out of not doing data governance. You can't just come up with an automated way of providing business solutions, business definitions, standards, policies, that agreement. Some people just think that they can buy a tool and then all of this is going to go away. And the other thing is, don't throw it over the fence. That happens in a lot of projects where, well, I don't know what we're going to do with that, so let's just go forward. That doesn't always work. So you can't just throw your problems over the fence. Again, this is a situation where along the way you document what challenges you couldn't overcome, and just make sure that you have those in your back pocket so that when you're going forward, when you do get more resources, you can address those. This is a photograph of the Winchester Mansion, if anybody's ever seen this. There are stairwells that go to nowhere. It just goes to the bottom of the floor, doesn't open up. There are doors between stairwells. There's doors that open three stories off the ground. So the idea with this is, don't let the loudest voice in the room win. Make sure that you keep focused on your goals. And this is a problem no matter how you're working on these projects, but make sure that you have that global perspective again, that you're managing to clear timed objectives and build on your successes. Build on them one at a time. Don't let the loudest person in the room win. And sometimes it may seem like the simplest concepts are often really challenging. Things like the business glossary, as I mentioned earlier. So avoid poor planning and vision. Keep your vision. Make sure you're focused, and you'll continue to make success. Mapping your route. This is important to kind of understand where you're going. Again, when we talked early on about what you're going to do, whether it's, I want to focus on glossary, I want to focus on standards, and maybe the top 5 data quality programs. Map your route. Map how you're going to move from gathering the requirements to building the first rules, to publishing those first rules and monitoring those rules. How are you going to go about doing the interviews for collecting your business glossary, for building out all of those necessary data elements? So map all that out and have a simple process and document it. Write down your process. Share it with other people so that they can put in their input as well. And one example of this that I found early on in one of my stewardship experiences was working with a financial firm. And this was a mutual fund company that had hundreds and hundreds of funds. And they were bringing these funds to market all the time, creating new funds. But one of the things that nobody had ever done was ask, what is the full process from end to end of creating a new fund, launching that fund, and all of the approvals you need in between? Who are the departments that are involved? who are all the people and the places that are out there, and who knew the entire process? And the answer was nobody did. They each knew their various components. They had handoffs from department to department, but nobody had ever taken the time to map the entire process. When we did, it was amazing what we found. Everybody had their own checklist. Oftentimes these checklists were conflicting with one another or didn't provide the specific information that the next channel needed down the line. They didn't understand all the rules and procedures that were out there. So corporate actions had their checklist and their things to do, and they did it the same way every time. They passed it off to legal. Legal picked it up with their checklist. On down the line, on down the line. Once we started bringing the whole process together and people started seeing it, they were like, oh, I didn't know you had that checklist. Did you know it conflicts with ours? That communication opened all kinds of doors and all kinds of opportunities for building new business rules, for creating standards and policies and procedures, as well as a coordination at a level that they'd never done before. We identified data owners, we identified data stewards, and all of the stakeholders and SMEs all along the way. And all of those bottlenecks that we had seen before, many of them were erased just with the launching of this. It was all associated with a new MDM fund product launch that we decided to map out the processes. So that's one of the things that you can consider when you're doing the programs is mapping out this type of full process end to end can also provide you not only with, early on we talked about tapping the resources for finding stewards. This is a great way to find rules, policies, procedures. Map out those processes. What are the core processes for your product domain, for your customer domain, and document them end to end. There are many opportunities when you do that, as I said, for all of these efficiencies and all of these things to be fleshed out. And of course, if you're doing that, write it down. Document that physically. Go into Visio, do a process flow from end to end, share that process flow with other people, share it across departments, talk about what bottlenecks or frustrations you found. And in doing so, once you document that, you're creating the foundation for repeatable processes in the future. And then you can package those into a presentation to show the success of your data governance efforts. How along with this major initiative, now you have not only done that, but you've created a foundation for change management, for issue resolution, whatever the case may be. And along the way, you've also, as a result, you found all of these standards, all of these rules that kind of came out of the woodwork when you did the process. So think long term. Understand that you don't need to boil the ocean all in one shot. Growing your program over time is the goal. That's exactly how this is supposed to work. It's not a big bang. So just remember that that's the way this always happens. So again, kind of as a recap, so identify your resources, your data owners, your stewards. Like I said, one of the best ways to do that is find who those gatekeepers are, the people that are feeling the pain today, the people that the managers go to, and identify those managers as potential data owners. Set your goals, whether it's just starting out with the top 5 data quality issues, or you just want to tackle the business glossary, or you want to set up some standards for an MDM program, or you pick 2 or 3 of those initiatives, and that's what you're starting out with. With each of the initiatives you tackle, write down your lessons learned. Write down, like along the way, I said those things that you didn't necessarily have a solution for. That's a lesson learned. And write down and build on those efforts. Then, of course, as you keep on going, you're going to expand on those efforts. It's going to start to be more of a formalized program. Even though you started out with small things, if you do that for 6 months, and then you look back on the next year, you'll see how many of those things you've tackled and how much of a structured program you already have, even though you started with some very humble beginning. So, of course, enterprise C-level, top-down data governance is what everybody really wants. But in doing it this way, you can build a foundation that you can get that buy-in from. All of these presentations you're coming up with, all of the processes, the director of stewardship, and showing all the people you've got involved in the program, that sells to executives. So when you get to that point, if you can provide a structure and say, this is a structure that we've been working on for 3 years, it works, we've been doing it, and that will open doors for you. So don't be afraid to market your success. Make sure that you publish it on a SharePoint site, that you announce it to the project team and to everybody else who's looking at the launch of the project. And after all, success builds successes, and it can become contagious. So continue to work on that contagious success. So welcome aboard. If you continue to build this organically, it will become an integral part of everyday business. It becomes something that you do on a regular, ongoing basis, not separate from, or not imposing, not onerous. And remember that it's never going to be finished. It's an ongoing initiative, and it's going to be taking years and years. And eventually, it becomes part of the way we do business. It's part of how things get done. So, questions?
Thank you, Russ. Thank you so much for that. And I love the spin on it. And really, it's not spin. I mean, more commonly, you hear about starting from the top down and having executive sponsorship, and that's still important. But I love this twist on it, really, that it has to happen too from a grassroots, bottom-up type of level. So thank you so much for the presentation. I'm going to start off with the questions. And again, to the audience, feel free to use the question bar in your right-hand control panel there. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Russ, is with regards to technology, right? We talk about data governance being people, process, and technology. Can you share a little bit about some of the technologies in this space? And also, in your opinion, you know, what's the importance of technology? Is it hugely significant? Is it a supporting role? If you could elaborate on that too, that would be helpful.
Sure. I mean, there's many resources out there that you can go today. If you're starting from the bottom up, you know, the technologies that you probably have most available to you are things like Excel for building your original data dictionary and your business glossary, as well as Word and, you know, the standard kind of office tools. But you also have SharePoint, which is a great collaboration site. It also has some, you know, workflow capabilities. So if you want to do validation with your data owners in a more formal way, you can leverage tools like that. As you're going to larger and larger scale, there are a number of data governance technologies themselves. Calibra is one of the big players in the industry. Informatica has a tool in this space, as well as a number of other companies out there that are moving in. And they offer some really more formal ways of traditional workflows that match each of the already established governance programs, more enhanced business glossary capabilities that can link not only your terms to themselves, but to the policies and rules and roles and all these other combinations that you can do. With larger and larger organizations, that becomes more critical. If you're multi-regional, multinational, you may need a tool that can help you collaborate across all of those geographical boundaries. But in the short term, things like SharePoint and Excel works just fine.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. You had mentioned in the presentation that targeting all domains can be a mistake. Have you ever had to scale back on scope? And if so, if you could share a little bit about what happened and what's the story that goes with that.
Yeah, oftentimes it's kind of the boil the ocean kind of thing. It's just hard to get focus if you're moving across all the domains at the same time. And oftentimes you have very different resources that need to be involved. So if you're going across customer to product, the people that are involved with customers are oftentimes very different. You know, that's your sales team, it's your legal team, whereas product is more internal. So trying to tackle those two things at the same time, often you just get too spread. you need more resources than you have available to yourself at one time. So oftentimes you have to back away from that and then focus on, okay, let's just tackle the customer one first, because we can focus on these resources with the resources we currently have. If you have a full-blown scale top-down, then you have multiple teams that you can, then task with each of those initiatives. But if you're going in like we're talking bottom-up, oftentimes you just don't have the resources for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. You had mentioned, in the presentation, the importance of data stewards. How many would you recommend to support a data governance initiative? And I'm guessing that part of that is size and scale, but, if there's a good rule of thumb, I think, some of our audience would like to know what that would be.
Sure, and that's going to vary by organization. It's also going to vary by domain. What I would say is that in terms of considering how many stewards you need, it's that whole component of looking at the domain and what are the major processes that support that domain. So if you're talking about products, how do you launch a new product? What parts of the company need to be involved with that? There's probably the core group that sets up new accounts and sets up new product structures. There's probably a legal component to that. What are the major processes that each new adoption goes through? With each one of those processes, you probably want a stewardship representation. So within the initial processing group and the legal group, whatever other groups may be involved with that, I think of it as a process-by-process kind of situation. And for each major process, you want to have stewardship representation.
Great, thank you. I know in some of my conversations out in the field, as far as data governance, one scenario really stands out in my mind, and it was for a manufacturer. And it was a very interesting problem that you had. And you talked about, picking like one specific use case and then maybe growing it from there. And, it was a very interesting story for them when they needed to, they did a lot of replacement parts. And so when they needed to replace a part, when it entered into the system, it had a part number. And then as it went to the next hop, that part number became a device number. And then as it made another hop, the term and the identifier changed yet again. And so in looking at the workflow end to end, that one particular part identified through the Data Governance Council, they found that it had 6 different names and 6 different identifiers. And so it wasn't necessarily like a data quality issue, because it wasn't really data quality, it was just different naming conventions. And so just by renaming it, giving it a universal part number, and having that be referenced by all of those different 6 systems, it just significantly shaved off their time to get that replacement product out and delivered. And so that's just like one story that, just is, burned into my mind. I was curious, if you had another example that you might share, because I think people remember stories, right? Just, with data governance, sometimes it's the invisible, right? And sometimes it's hard to get mind share around it. Like you said, people may not understand it, or they may be fearful of it. Could you give an example of a business problem that data governance has solved or can solve in your experience?
Hey, I'm trying to think. I think one of the ones that I've seen commonly is how effectively standardization around address and address cleansing can be really a major thing. I've seen in a lot of organizations, especially with multi-regional organizations, where you have systems from all over, the company or all over the world that are trying to merge their data together. Addresses are so broadly captured in different regions and different parts of the world. And so there's often great duplication and it's difficult to understand even, who your vendors are, your customers are, or any of the major players. So something as simple as standardizing addresses and naming standards for corporations and for individuals can really, really create efficiencies in organizations and help them get rid of the deduplication, cut down on major costs where you may be duplicating mailings to a single customer or a single vendor. Not only is that a risk of not only additional cost, but it's a risk in the reputation because people are like, why am I getting so many, 6 of the same thing from this company? But they know I'm the same guy. So that address scenario kind of goes across all different organizations and all different industries. And that's one of the major things, I think, one of the major things we tackle on a regular basis. But like you said, the same thing with coding and moving from corporation to corporation or merging of individuals. That's often a major issue between systems. So that those duplication issues can cause all kinds of challenges for organizations.
Absolutely, and that was just such a small use case, but the ROI on it was truly significant just in that one little effort. Okay, next question that has come in, it's pretty long, so I'm going to read it to you, Russ. If you need me to read it again, certainly can. So here's the question. Your take on data governance for internal data models that are not part of enterprise data warehouse, but individual teams build and maintain them, and the problem arises when someone from other teams has to use these as data sources. Usually these internal models are less or not governed as compared to the enterprise data warehouse. Does that question make sense? Do you want me to read it again, Russ?
I believe what they're saying is often what happens in many different functional areas of organizations. They build their own data marts, or what you call homegrown data mart solutions, where they've modeled together the data that they need for that specific purpose. But when you bridge to another organization, the aggregations may not be the same. The way they're capturing data or using the joins they're making. So in some cases, people build them incorrectly. Those are common issues that you come across where you just don't agree. Now you have challenges in the reporting. Department A is reporting one number, Department B is reporting a second number. Those are very common across organizations. Oftentimes it's just out of necessity. People need to get the information as soon as they can, so they tap on local resources to build those things versus going to more of an enterprise approach. And those are exactly the kind of things that building, when you're taking on new initiatives, that's what you want to look for. Those opportunities where these two conflicting data marts or data models are coming up with inaccurate or at least irreconcilable differences. And that's an opportunity to bring those resources together and try to build a more common solution.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. With that, we were, trying to keep it within the 45-minute mark. We went a little bit over. Would like to invite everyone to our next one. It's going to be on Thursday again, April 5th at 11 a.m. And this will be MDM for data warehousing. So MDM, but with a little bit of a lime twist with how it applies to data warehousing. So I've seen this one at some of the user group sessions, and this is a really good one as well. So I'm hoping all of you are, if this touches an area that you're responsible for, I hope that you'll be in attendance as well. So thank you, everyone, for attending, for your participation, for your time. We hope this was helpful. A lot of times we get asked about the recording or getting access to the slides. Yes, we do record it. And so anyone that is officially registered, we will send out that registration link. Feel free to share it with your colleagues, leadership, review it yourself, however you would like to use that recording. And it's always posted on our website as well, datasourceconsulting.com. So with that, we'll wrap it step. And I want to thank our presenter, Russ Starck. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And everyone, have a great rest of your Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.